Welcome to tonight's DEI meeting. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so the minutes were sent out. Please take a minute to look over them if you haven't done so already. Okay, can I have a movement to approve the minutes? Ms. Jager, thank you. And then a second, Ms. Schmitz, thank you. So next on the list are the reports from the subcommittees. Did the community engagement subcommittee meet?
We did.
Okay, I got it, Lee. I had to
Oh, you
unmute
did?
myself.
Okay. Thank you, Gwen.
Okay. So we met on February 1st and we discussed our January 16th fireside chat. The noon chat, there were 3 DEI committee members present. No committee members attended. We stayed the full hour just in case someone came in later. The evening session was canceled due to the weather. It was brought to our attention that all future fireside chat dates are the same as the Board of Education meetings, and we discussed whether to keep our dates or change them, and the decision was made to keep the scheduled dates. We continue to explore ideas to get more engagement from the community. Some of the ideas presented were hosting a Saturday event, family gatherings, a district survey to see what people would like to see the committee do. We also thought of having them write in questions through thought exchange to engage folks and create an opportunity for dialogue. Another possibility was to create a newsletter with an op-ed section, as well as exploring the possibility of students doing a chat among their peers to share their concerns. We're also looking at transparency and ways to express to the Guilderland community what is happening, as well as the possibility of a community book club or book study. One of the things that we talked about was realizing that we're coming up to the end of the school year. We're looking at what can be done to amp things up for next year. Our intentions are good, but we're still not reaching people with our fireside chats. Last year, during a noon meeting, someone shared that there was a new family to the area and the children felt uncomfortable in their school because their culture was different, and the family's concern was that they didn't know, where to go or who they could trust to talk to. So we're just looking at some ways to kind of break down those fears and concerns and those barriers. So the question that we had was, who is our community? Should we work to do sessions for the staff, perhaps a department meeting day or a CI session? We're open to conversations, recommendations for us. We want to be sure that we're working toward total inclusivity because at the end of the day, it's about all of us. I'm not sure if Anju is on, but we were going to ask her to do an update on the community events that are taking place, like the anti-hate rally that she's working on. So I can't see if she's on or not. Doesn't look like it. Okay, if there's someone else that can share that information, it'll be great. If not, I'm finished with my report. If there are any questions, I'm here. Mary, yes, I'm sorry.
Get my.
I think we lost her.
Maybe she got bumped out. Okay, so she can come back. I'm finished unless anyone else has a question.
I do have a question, just a really quick one that may already have been thought about with all the stuff in the news about the Guilderland Library and the issues that are potentially happening there. Have we had any thought or conversation about how that affects our fireside chats and potentially folks not wanting to participate in that type of event at a library with everything so unsettled?
So we haven't had a meeting yet. I think we have a meeting coming up next week. I had kind of thought about that, but I don't want to I don't want to share my thoughts. I just, it was problematic for me, but that's just me.
I think I was just mentioning, yeah, I feel the same a bit, but I just wanted to make sure that it was on folks' radar that, there are people that may not attend that maybe wanted to attend before because of
Yeah.
just that connotation. So,
Yeah, thank you. Mary?
Yes, I think one of the things that I had emailed Leah earlier was when thinking about the fireside chats, and the whole idea of outreach meaning us going out to the community. And perhaps that's what we need to do more of, instead of having a set place for the community to come to us, for us to reach out to them. It might be a case of asking local churches, can we come and sit there? Can we have a forum there, a meet and greet, and start to think a little bit more outside the box other than going to the library and in a set time for people to come. So, I'd really like our committee to think about that, kind of reinventing the outreach into the community and truly do that and look at the town and say, where can we go? How can we get our message out?
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful idea, especially as we start looking at how we're going to like really get out there and get the word out, looking at last year, because, looking at next year, I'm sorry, last year we kind of talked about it was okay. We were looking at new ways to get out there this year because last year we were just kind of getting it started, but now we're the second year in and we need to do some more work. So I think that's a great idea. So, okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you.
Mike, you had your hand up.
I'm sorry.
Mary echoed exactly what I agree with. I mean, Gwen, I've come to a bunch of the fireside chats, and she knows that you sit there for like an hour and wait for people. And so I think trying different ways to engage the community might be the next step. So I agree with what everything been said.
Mary?
I think it's especially important now with the publicity surrounding the library and what's going on, and that we still continue to give people a forum in which to express their concerns and talk and answer their questions to the best that we can, that we don't have all the answers. But I really would like us to see that step to get out into the community.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Just as an idea, I know our PTAs, especially I think Guilderland Elementary, but other groups as well have reached out to some of our apartment complexes that have meeting spaces. And we've done that for like reading programs, or I think PTA meetings have happened in those spaces to make it easier for families to get there. So maybe that's another idea, because those parts of our community tend to be very, very diverse and send to us many, many children. So just a thought.
They're also not as it's better if it was like in an apartment complex where more people would have access and easier to get to.
Right.
Rather than always depending on getting someplace in a car and depending on how far you are from a location. And I guess that's what I'm thinking more of, pocket meetings within our community.
Okay, does anyone else have any other comments? Okay, then next on my list is the research committee.
Yes, we met on February 7th. Derek, Nina, and I were there, and we were attempting to look at the survey from Nick. Is his last name Harris? I think so. The psychologist that was working with the committee last year on trying to get some research on the school districts. And we did find out that out of the thousands of surveys sent out, we only received about 100. Well, they only received about 100 responses. So we don't have the data that we were hoping to have from the survey. So we're trying to think about different ways of how we can get that information. And we're also gonna reach out to Nick again to see if he had any additional information about from the psychologist as well. We talked about the equity plan being shared the week prior. And that it seemed like all the districts had bought into the plan, and each building has to come up with goals. And the district as a whole will create goals. We talked about the fact that a climate study was requested and Nina talked to us about what they do in South Colony, that they had a teacher and student climate survey. And Derek was going to be looking at Niskayuna's survey that they have. And then Nina also talked to us about the NAME program, which records a student's name for proper recognition. And then we talked about different ways to make sure that we were communicating through language. So language lines, affordable and accessible. Hoping to get back if it's affordable for the district. We talked about how the climate survey is going to shape the work of the district. Looking at things through an equity lens really helps us support the students and the staff, and the learning environment. We talked about state ed also has a free climate survey that we were going to look at to see if it had what we needed. We brainstormed different committees, how we could get them involved on supporting the survey, potentially communications or the community outreach to possibly assist with the promotion of the survey. But really our main goals at this point in time are to evaluate the data that we have from Nick's research and how to address those outcomes. And I see Nina's here and Derek's here as well. So if there's anything I left out, please fill in. Nan, any questions?
Nina, go ahead.
Great
Go
job.
ahead.
Nothing you left out. I just wanted to say one thing to mention, that the idea being that by establishing the goals, that the ongoing continuum of looking at the results from the climate surveys will continue to feed those goals. So it's like the relationship between those two different methods. So as we begin to devise our goals based on the survey that was done by Progression Partners last year, that's obviously informative. But by having the climate survey, it'll be interesting to see how those goals change, or how accurate they are to the areas that need to be identified. Basically, though, perfect. You did a great job.
Well, thank you. Any other questions?
Okay.
None.
Then I guess we can move on to the Student Voice Committee.
I can share for Student Voice. I just want to mention that for the anti-hate rally, our first meeting is tomorrow, so more updates will be coming on that soon. So first, for Student Voice, we talked about the communication issue between teachers and students, and how some students still don't have a trusted adult in the building. We talked about possible ways we could overcome this, and how important it was to have teachers and staff that actually represented the student body, and how that would help students build better relationships with their teachers. And then we talked about ways we could possibly increase student engagement with clubs, and how that's still a problem. And we thought it would be a good idea to have one social media page with information about all the clubs and updates about the clubs, so that way students can just look at that page and get updated. And we also talked about the importance of having an in-person club fair versus a virtual club fair. And we talked about how we need to bring back the Student Voice Club to use that as a platform to bring students together and help them voice their issues. And then lastly, we ended by talking a little bit about the climate at the school and how that's sort of changed a little bit over the past couple months. And we also had that discussion about the equity ecosystem at the school and its impact on staff and the students. if anyone wants to add anything, feel free to do so.
I just wanted to add one other thing that came up for us to take note of is that students had asked if we could revisit communicating to students the role of the board and the Board of Ed and how we also support these efforts for students.
Ms. Gonzalez-Parker, go ahead.
Thanks. Yep, I was going to echo what Katie said, and I've heard from other students since that sometimes the students don't really know what the board is doing, and so I was going to say maybe we can refer this to our communications committee because the students are very much part of the community, and perhaps we need to communicate with them a little bit more often or consistently.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Shreya. Next is the communication subcommittee.
Thanks. So we met earlier this month, and we talked a little bit about those fireside chats and just like those dates, and if we would continue with them, wanting to keep student artwork fresh for advertising. And so hoping to connect with some art teachers to see, you know, how to get student artwork out there to advertise for that, or whatever thing we might want to do to engage with the community. We had the communications team there, and so they gave us a little update on the video that they have been gathering content for, and it looks like late spring would be a good place for them to have, you know, bulk of that content ready to go. Maybe in May or after the rally would be the time when we would see some sort of finished product with all of the work that they've done this year. We also talked about how currently right now the multicultural calendar observances on our website has still been 2023. So after, you know, realizing that and actually hearing from a teacher about that, because they wanted to go on the page and see something, Derek and I worked on creating a 2024, an updated calendar for this year. So we are hoping that will be up soon, and we share that with the communications team. So I think that was the bulk of our conversation. And Mike and Marie could add on if they remember anything else that I might have missed. I don't think so. Thanks.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, then next is DEI in action. Off to Mr. Westbrook.
Okay, for DEI in action, we have been busy since our last meeting. We've attended a few student forums. In fact, there's one tomorrow that we'll be attending. We did speak with students about Unity Week and the Anti-Hate Rally, and the students are well underway with planning for that and are really taking the lead. We're just supportive logistics in a supportive logistics role, but the students are really spearheading that activity. There was a statewide DEI meeting. Those forums are generally helpful, and we tend to be able to talk to issues there, so that was helpful and good for us to do. We did have the district equity team meeting, which you've heard about, several subcommittees, and we did discuss the equity ecosystem. I'm not sure which way you would pronounce it, but just what an equity lens is, how to use it to develop your SMARTY goals that are inclusive and equitable, and how we want to be able to, after a goal cycle, be able to reassess ourselves and to redirect our energy so that we're very much more responsive to the environment and can look to see what we need to do to either amplify what we're doing at the levels that it's happening, or look at other particular areas in our ecosystem where we can maybe augment these programs and discuss it on a policy level as well. We just talked about it earlier that we had we went to a French class at Farnsworth Middle School with Jessica Paulden, and Leah and I both worked together to do a Black History Month program where we talked about the connections between the African diaspora and French culture and how they've interacted with each other over the years. And we did that through the lens of music. So students were able to listen to music and talk about the role that music plays in cultures and how people have used it to express themselves. And that was a lively group. I think they stuck with us for 80 minutes. I did take the lion's share of the time unintentionally, but as I think Ms. Paulden said, it was like a college course for them, but it was, I think they need to have the history to go along with the music that they were listening to, but it was a lot of fun. And I enjoyed the students immensely. They had a lot of insight and they were definitely connected to what we were talking about. I was also a panelist for Anthem Insurance for Black History Month. So I was their speaker, and that was an interesting experience for myself. And we also met with Altamont Elementary School and help them talk through SMARTY goals, how to develop SMARTY goals and where were the next steps. And I think that that was a very enlightening meeting for a number of reasons, but it did get to the point, get back to the point, the need for us to have a solid foundation in terms of being able to empathize and being able to have a sense of community, a sense of belonging, and how that can either undermine or augment the work that we're trying to do, whether it's in any aspect of our ecosystem, whether it's looking at curriculum or making any other changes in the district. So that was a very enlightening time, and I think that we're looking for strategizing ways to work together to help them troubleshoot the concerns that they had. So yes, we're still working on climate study, superintendent's day planning, and there's another statewide DEI meeting tomorrow. So we're keeping busy.
Okay, any questions or comments?
No, that I want to say, Derek, even though you said that you spent a lot of time, I thought it was fascinating. I think I learned so much today by listening to all of the knowledge that you were able to bring, and all the fun too, with all the music. So that was great, and I was able to. I really love being able to go into a lot of different schools. And so I got to witness a Spanish lesson in, I think it was a first grade class at GES. And it was a parent who came in and did a lesson for this teacher's class. And then at I think it was at Pine Bush, there was a teacher who was teaching about China, and so before the break, brought in some Chinese food, and they, were celebrating Lunar New Year, and the kids were having a really good time there. At GS again, there was I brought in a speaker. His name is Matt Barnes he's a scientist from Antarctica, and taught the second graders about all these things about Antarctica. And so they had a great time before break. And I think my favorite part, the thing that I've done this past month, has been being in Sherry Hart's sixth grade English class. We were celebrating World Read Aloud Day, and we're able to get author May Respicio, who is a Filipino author. Her new book isn't even out yet. It's called Isabel in Bloom. And before she did a virtual meeting with us, with her class, I was able to teach sixth grade students, and we did all the different stations about Philippine culture and who is Filipino, and they were floored by some of the people that they didn't know. They're like, that guy from Guardians of the Galaxy is Filipino. I'm like, yes, look at this. So it was really, really fun to interact with some of those kids. And then I saw some of them today because they take French. So it was really wonderful to be in all of these classrooms.
Anyone else? Okay, next agenda item is the membership update.
Thank you, Varshini. Just a little reminder, it doesn't seem possible, but we are at that point in the year when we start thinking about the transition of our members on our diversity, equity, and inclusion team. And so we have a couple students who are graduating, although Varshini, maybe not, maybe we'll keep you around. But Varshini and Noah are graduating, so we'll be looking for a couple more students to join our team. We have 3 staff members who will be meeting or exceeding their term limits. I think Mr. Laster, you've been here since the beginning and you stayed on again an additional year, but Chris Jager and Mike Laster and Mary Schmitz are coming to the end of your terms. And then we have 3 parents who are cycling off, Nina, Julianne, and Tyann, and 2 community members, Carla Young and Gwen Pope. So typically what we do in March is send out a letter through a variety of our communication channels, letting individuals know that we have open spots on our DEI committee, and we seek letters of interest, which are, very informal, but why would you like to be on this committee? Why would you be interested? What is your commitment? What contributions do you think you could make to the work that we're trying to do? And then the board in April, May-ish reviews those letters, and we appoint new DEI committee members in early June so they can attend the June meeting all together and sort of get acclimated to the work that we do. So this is really just a heads up that work is beginning. I'll just remind all of you who are cycling off that our subcommittees are forever open to your good work. And, honestly, it's in the subcommittees that a lot of the roll up your sleeves, get the work done happens. So, I'm hoping you will all continue in that capacity. And, after a year off, you can always come back. So the door is always open, except for seniors and who are going to be, off into, who knows what in the greater world. And I'll just point out for students who are not seniors, our students are welcome to stay on this committee through their career here in Guilderland. So we don't cycle off students except when they walk off with their diploma. So that's just a little update. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, if there aren't any questions or comments, we'll move on to the learning component.
Okay. Good evening. Let me look at the list of folks who are here. All right, I do not see them on. All right. The learning component this week, we wanted to feature some of the alumni students to talk about their experiences in the school district. And we wanted to learn a little bit about some of the programs that are offered to the school, like Unified PE, Unified Athletics, and the Best Buddies program. While we're here, I know that we still have our PPS leaders with us today too, Mrs. Knowles, Mrs. Rivers, and Mrs. Diol. Would you be willing to give us a little rundown of our Unified PE, Unified Athletics, and Best Buddies program?
I'll do my best. Good evening, everyone. Coach Relier should have been the star tonight. But so we have a variety of unified sports where students with different abilities work along their neurotypical peers. We have Unified Bocce just started this past fall, Unified bowling is currently occurring, and then there'll be unified basketball later in the spring. And if you really want to experience the joy of community and camaraderie, you really should attend one of these events. It's just heartwarming to see the students interact with one another and support one another. And it's a wide range of abilities. We have some students who are nonverbal, while are some students who have physical disabilities, and they interact so joyfully with their neurotypical peers, and it's just so fun to watch and be there. So the last unified bowling match is next Tuesday, March 5th at Town and Country in Guilderland around 4:15, and they meet up against Colony. So if you're around and want to check it out, I encourage you to attend. And also, I mean, and there's unified PE, so I think students are selected or recommended. Maybe Megan knows a little bit more how they how they are enrolled. Where again, it's similar. It's combined classes of our students with different abilities and their general education counterparts who support one another, and it's very team building games and different activities where they work together. And Mr. Laster is piloting it at the middle school, so happening down there as well. And Best Buddies is an after school club based at the national organization, again for community building activities, fostering peer relationships, and supporting each other. Sort of a quick snapshot, my knowledge. Megan, do you have anything to add about?
I believe we may have a student here who participates in our PE class. I remember someone last time speaking to their experience with it.
Yeah, I'm in unified PE.
Oh, okay, Varshini, well, jump on in.
Directly.
Well, this is my first year doing it. It's amazing, the community we have and the relationships that we build. Every class are incredible. Usually we have partner-athlete partnerships, and then we go on walks, and that's the time where we get to have conversations and really get to know each other. And if it wasn't for unified PE, I'd never be able to interact with people with different abilities, and I think it's just amazing that we have the opportunity to do that. And we just did bowling, and that was so fun. They turned out all the lights and put Christmas lights up, and it was amazing. And yeah, it's a fun time. I look forward to unified all the time.
Marie just lost power, so I don't know.
Okay.
She was saying she was concerned about that at the beginning of the meeting. So
we'll have to keep an eye
you're
out.
in charge, Derek.
Not a problem.
Mr. Laster, you wanna?
Yes, Mike, you wanna jump in?
Yeah, I just want to chime in. We're pretty excited at FMS. Second semester, we're piloting the Unified PE program with all of our teams. Well, not all of our teams, our 8th grade teams and some of our CPS students. And if successful, it looks like we're potentially going to be able to offer that next year as one of the options for our kiddos as well. So in terms of the inclusivity factor, that's awesome that we're able to spread it down to the middle school as well. So I'm glad it's working.
That is a key to this whole discussion that I wanted to, and why we're bringing it up. Inclusion is obviously a hallmark of our DEI work and how we want to bring students in. Next time around, we'll be talking about some of the instructional challenges that are there for us when it comes to creating inclusive classrooms. And that's why we pretty much brought in the big guns and the leadership to come down and help us, just walk through some of those issues and how we're addressing them in the district. But at least from my reading, a lot of students face, a lot of social challenges that can exacerbate the academic problems. If the students aren't feeling included, if they're not getting support socially, to be able to make the adjustment and to be able to be resilient at the school, that that could cause problems in all the other areas. So the programs that we have here that are already addressing that are pretty impressive from an outsider's perspective, because I don't see these programs at a lot of schools, and I think Guilderland is ahead of the curve in a lot of ways with that. I know we may have some parents, I'm not sure, who may have children who are struggling in this area, and are looking for ways to support their children within the school district, and maybe hearing back from them. So I would definitely want to open it up to people to maybe discuss their experience, or to share how the social aspect of, being included in school impacts the academic, and how we can help support those students. And again, the chat is open if people want to share in the chat as well. Who might not want to come off camera and talk. Go ahead, Ted.
I have a question. What is the process for getting like services if you need it? Like, I know my district, for example, like it's so tedious and it's so hard work to get a child like the services they need. I'm just kind of wondering, like, what's Guilderland's protocol like?
What do you mean, Tilly?
Like, let's say that a student like needs, like they have like a learning disability, like they can't, not necessarily learning disability, but like
They're having struggles with.
they're like need like intervention, for
Yeah.
example.
Lisa,
Like-
do you want to go, or?
Oh, I'll go, and then Kelly, Mike, and
Yeah.
Megan, please jump in. So the first place to start, and we have a very, we have a range of tiered systems of support. So we really want to start intervening early through our multi-tiered system. So there's reading intervention, there's math intervention as young, into the elementary grades. We have school counselors, we have school social workers in each of the schools if there's social emotional needs. We started last year, and this is our second year of pushing speech and language and occupational therapy services into our kindergarten classes for all of our kindergarten students to really start to build those speech and language skills and fine motor skills and support them at a really young age, because we were finding when they were coming into school that those are some of the first areas of need that are identified, language and fine motor. So we, across all kindergartens, do whole group lessons, and then throughout the year they'll break off into small groups if students are continuing to struggle. So we work through our school-based support team. So every school, every elementary school, the middle school as well as the high school have school-based support teams or student support teams, where it's a group of professionals who come together, talk about which students are struggling to maybe meet benchmarks or progress, or having social emotional challenges, and come up with interventions first. We want to try everything first before we say that a student has a disability, because once, we make that leap and there's, longer term implications. So Kelly, Megan, Mike, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you, from the district perspective, gave a good overview. From the middle level perspective, I have 5 catchment areas with 5 different communities where we welcome students to the middle school, and then we have 3 years to prepare them for high school, which is high stakes transcript, college preparation sort of environment, right? So we have to take all of the information we get from our K-5 colleagues and program appropriately for student needs, and then in 3 years prepare them for excellence at Guilderland High School. And I'm pretty proud to say that I think we do a pretty good job with that for 90, 98, 99% of our kiddos. Nina, or I don't know who was up first.
Okay, I'm speaking as a parent and as a teacher. So I think some people understand this who are on the call. Let's face it, there's been a shift, and that's just not in Guilderland, it's across the board. And children need services, and it's a difficult process because services cost the district money. And there's definitely factors involved. And I'm sorry if I'm not holding back here, but I have personal issues or situations that motivate my words. And I'm using this platform as a way to say what many of us are aware of. The tiered system, I understand it's a way to kind of make sure that kids are getting what they need at each level, but it's also a way to prevent kids from getting identified. And I have to say that because I've been through it as a teacher in my home district, as well as Guilderland School District. We see it. It's statewide. And it's a situation because New York State set limits as to how many students to be given identified 504 plans or IEPs because it is a cost-effective situation. Sorry, couldn't hold back, but it's a personal, I have to say, you know, I've experienced it on my own level for my own children. So,
and Nina, the frustration at my level as a school official is we're held accountable for our percentage of students, right? So the system breakdown that you're talking about is real. However, we, as the other 753 school districts that have to deal with it in New York State, have to deal with it. And that's the challenge. And I don't disagree with your opinion or feelings, but it is reality. It is reality.
And I'll just jump in.
Yes.
Sorry, Nina. I don't know. I'm sorry if I interrupted somebody. I know people have their hands up. I just do want to clarify. I mean, the state doesn't set limits on who's identified or how many 504 plans we can give. We really want to ensure we are meeting students where they're at, and students are getting what they need, and prevent and intervene as early as possible. And when that gets to a point where they need more support, then there's a referral process to the Committee on Special Education, and that goes through each school-based support team. And the model at the elementary school is that every teacher goes to the school-based support team. Students are brought to the table and prioritized and monitored regularly, and good conversations happen at those meetings. So it's almost every student is referred and talked about at the elementary level, and reading specialists and math specialists monitor progress. And we have, as I mentioned, related service personnel in all of our buildings to support those students. At the middle level, it's more a team-based approach for problem solving. And at the high school level, it's student specific with teams and groups of people. So I hear you're frustrated, and it can be, difficult when there's some difficult conversations that need to have about those services for students. But we really try to intervene as early as possible, and because we're required to have a multi-tiered system of support. The state is revising those initiatives, and we are working with we have a district committee on that right now, and working on solidifying and figuring out where our gaps are so we can improve our multi-tiered systems of support for students. So I know Katie's got a hand up, and Shaka has a hand up.
Great, thank you. I'd like to respond a little differently, but as a parent, for a child who's gone through the district of mine with a learning disability and social struggles. So for the support that was at the elementary level and the middle school level, it was great. And one of the things about the middle school that was helpful through that phase is because it's so team-based, everybody was kind of looking out at how things were going. And so there really was a full team approach at monitoring that. And then things changed significantly based on schedules to the high school, which is a huge time of struggle for students who have social needs. But then what happens is it's kind of more reliant on them to seek out support for that. But if they had the skills to do that, they wouldn't be a child who had severe social needs. So That transition from the middle school to the high school, and that looking out at that support, and really, it's not the same. It's not been smooth or easy. I will say that. And I do worry that we're missing a lot of kids who probably need that support. One of the other things for our special learners is that they already feel that they stand out. They know that they have extra helpers, in their classes. That looks a little different at the high school than at the middle school too, because as a team approach, sometimes in the middle school, children can't even identify who the teacher's there to work with. It's just part of the natural progress. It's not really the same necessarily always at the high school level. So they already feel different. So then having to get additional support that they have to seek out on their own is like one more step. So I do worry that maybe that's something we need to look at the high school level more.
Shaka.
I think I'm like Katie, and I have various sides to this issue coming from as a parent. I have two children that have had IEPs. One's a great adult who graduated Advanced Regents with distinction with his IEP, and I on the other side of the state in Rochester, and I'm very, happy for that. And now I have an almost 9-year-old that's in Guilderland District now. And she just received her IEP this summer. And feel like if I didn't have the knowledge as a parent and also have the support system that I have of, other parents that have gone through this issue, I wouldn't have been able to stand up and say, I need a second opinion from, what is being told to me about my child who I know has issues that needed to be addressed in the school setting, and, advocated for that second opinion. And it actually came back in our favor. So she is able to get what she needs, and she has a great team behind her. Westmere has been fabulous with her all through. They've been supporting her. And I think we are missing a lot of parents that don't have that knowledge to support parents. And, as someone that also works for New York State government, I can say that there are a lot of things are financially based. And I would say that it's not a school district issue at this point. Knowing what I know, it's not a school district issue. It's a system issue. If you don't have the money to pay for these services for children, where are you going to get it from? And it's a larger issue than just the district. And it's a larger issue than we're going to be able to figure out here. But, I sympathize all the way across the board, because you guys also have a job to do as educators, and it's difficult, to do your job if there are children that have needs that aren't being met, right? So it affects everyone. So I say that to say it's a larger issue, but as parents, we need to stand up and advocate for our children. So.
Chris.
I appreciate what you've all said about your children's experiences. I wanted to voice that at our last fireside chat, we did have one parent who came, and then they also participated in the board meeting after that. And a lot of what they spoke about echoes these parents. They specifically were looking at those social opportunities and interactions, and Unified is an awesome start to that, but to see those experiences be something that could happen not just for those students who, sorry, my cat has decided now is when she's going to spaz and run around. Not just when students choose to participate in Unified Sports, because for our regular education students, that's an option, but also in other places in their school day. And I think in a middle school perspective, I see less interactions. And I would love to see more interactions, because when we have less interactions, then it's easier for my students to say, those kids are other, those kids aren't the same. And, I love co-taught. I think that the way our model works, that the teachers, you don't know who those teachers are in there supporting, but then you have students who are more clearly have additional needs. And so I'm seeing so much more negativity towards those students. And I think that, like Shaka, I believe, said, that is a microcosm of a bigger issue, whether that's statewide as far as services, but also nationally as been what these kids are perceiving in social media. And what a lot of things are saying is like, we treat others not kindly. So I think we're missing opportunities. Best Buddies is another one. It's very limited in its scope. I would love to see more opportunities to have kids work with students of different abilities and see that it's not, we talked last month about neuroatypicality and that it's not less, it's just different. And the more we realize that different isn't less, then we're not like, oh, well, we can put those people in this category and put them in this box and treat them differently and treat them less. So my 2 cents.
No, and I think we've talked about that too, and trying how we can use that unified PE model, expand that to other arts and music and other areas to bring students together.
Yeah, even extracurriculars that aren't just that specific extracurricular.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I have a student who participates in one of the clubs that I'm organized that for them, that is an enormous social opportunity. And for the other students who might not have that same level of need, it's an important social reckoning to say, hey, here's somebody who clearly has other kinds of needs, but we can be an ally for them. Even if that's not necessarily the purpose of the organization, but it is because it's called the Alliance.
Nina, you had your hand up. I think you're muted.
Sorry. I just want to say, I think that's great that there are those programs that are being brought in. I think that will definitely help to have the kids find ways to connect with each other, because middle school is pretty rough, and the way that they treat each other and the insults that involve special ed, this new way of referring to it, it's pretty awful. The area that I would like to see, and I don't know if there's a solution to it, but the social media world is so Lord of the Flies, and it's scary. What happens there, I feel like, is bigger than what we are able to fight against. I mean, there's got to be a way to do it, but I would love to find a way to counter that, because that just runs so deep for them. The first thing the kids do when they wake up is think about how many likes they have or how many snaps they got, and that's it's all that surrounds them. So that that area is tough. I don't know what schools could do for that, for social media specifically, but it's definitely a problem. And I also just want to say, speaking to what you were saying before, I do feel that like for my child, after fighting for many years, Shaka, something you had said, I was able to get the IEP that my daughter deserved, but it's because, like you said, I'm an educator, and I knew what the diagnoses were showing, and I knew what the, where she would qualify and why she would qualify. And if I didn't know that, I would not have been able to achieve what I achieved. And I know that people on the call are aware that I've been through that, right? And it's not easy. And I understand. I have one of my very good colleagues is a school psychologist, and I hear that what they have to do to make sure that students should receive identified services. I get it 100%. But I think that, there are so many situations as a teacher. I see some very sad situations where my students should be identified, and they're not, and the parents are not informed. And I see it from that perspective, So I definitely think that there's a problem. Somewhere there's a breakdown. And I'm not going to point fingers at where that is coming from. I do know that that there is a financial aspect to identifying students. It's fact. I've heard what the numbers are, but the point is that we have to be we are in the job of people, of students, of kids, and and I also think that in terms of the Best Buddies programs and things like that, those do help the children that are life skills. But there's a whole group of kids who are above life skills, but they still may not be, neurotypical, as we say, right? And those students are the ones that sometimes get lost. And so what are the programs we have to help those students as well feel a way to identify and not be ostracized? Because they are the ones that are ostracized because they're not in the life skills group, which, you know, hopefully most of our kids can see that we can't treat children with such severe needs like that. But it's the children that may not fit in that are the ones that are hurting. And what groups and what ways do we have to connect with those kids who are trying to be like everyone else?
So, Nina, the one thing I can say is we're excited to welcome Chris Vollum to do a K-12 PTA parent event, social media awareness thing in March. So to your point about the behaviors of students and adults on social media in our school community, I think that's an event that's coming up that I really, really hope many, many people take advantage of. I think it's a learning opportunity for everyone, not only students, but also adults. So that's going to be March 20th, Wednesday at 7 p.m. It's a virtual event. So everybody needs to stay tuned for some communication that's coming out from the district, I think within the next 24 or 48 hours. But in terms of your social media comments, I think that's some efforts from the school district that we're trying because, you know, from my lens, as you know, it's a constant battle that is almost impossible to control because we only have our learners for 7 hours and 45 minutes, and then you have them for the rest of the time. And most of the social media behaviors that we deal with don't happen in school. And that's the reality. We're just reacting to those behaviors that are happening outside of school on social media. So I feel your frustration, and I understand that the students that we are serving now have to deal with technologies and different types of conflict that we did not have to deal with when we were going through K-12 education, right? You know, they can go to bed and shut off their phones, and there still can be conversation happening about them amongst different like text groups or social media groups or Snapchats or Facebook. Well, no, they don't use Facebook anymore. That's just YouTube. Sorry, my bad. But I'm sure there's another platform that they use that we're not talking about, right? But Varshini, you can let me know. I don't know. So I hear you, Nina.
Yes. I think part of the push in this work of trying to develop an equity lens, I said it at the district get together, and a minute, having an equity lens means that when you put that lens on, you're looking to be deliberately inclusive. And if we don't have that lens on, if we're not being deliberately inclusive, then we're not doing DEI work. And that's something that we wanted to stress, because when you're looking at this ecosystem, we have parents, we have students, we have teachers, we have building level leadership, we have executive leadership, and everybody's looking at the same problem from a different perspective and addressing it. And what an equity lens does is say, hey, we're all connected in this. You know, what we do at each level has an impact. Part of the reason we're having this conversation to begin with is because leadership at different levels of this district have said this is an issue that we need to bring to the forefront more and make it part of the DEI conversation. We're having discussions about multi-tiered student support systems and how to implement them. We're looking at trying to change the teaching and learning culture at the school and the values, and those shifts have impact to everyone in our ecosystem, and the things that are happening need to be seen collectively, because I think everyone can come up with a challenge from their perspective that's in the system that needs to be addressed and where the shortcomings are. And then the next piece is like, okay, how do we begin to pull together collectively, more collectively, to close those holes in our nets? And that's the challenge that lies before us, is how do we help connect. You know, the beautiful thing for me anyway, coming into this district is that I've had conversations with teachers at different aspects of this ecosystem, and everybody is stressing some of the same things and issues and problems. And now the challenge before us is to say, okay, how do we do this work in a way that allows us to program or design from the margins and work our way in to catch those students who are falling through the holes in our system, and throw lifelines to the parents who are out there struggling, who may not know how to navigate the system as well, and addressing some of the frustrations of our faculty and staff who are saying, hey, I got a student who needs this help, and the system right now isn't really conducive to addressing this particular student's concern, because they are on that margin or they are falling through the hopes in the system. And how do we work this out? There's not going to be a solution. There's going to be multiple ones, and we want to integrate them and coordinate them in a way that we can stand together and say that we're making steps and we're getting a little further along. We do have a number of programs that are addressing needs as they come. I'm watching folks from curriculum instruction, from the PPS leadership and team planning, and coming together to figure out what is our next step to change the culture, to move us a little further forward, to be more effective for our students. And I like the fact that we have these things and we're aware of the tensions, and we can have a clear-eyed discussion and be able to say, okay, how are we addressing this, and how are our goals being set, so that we don't miss some of these key issues. So I'm thankful for everyone who's shared their perspective tonight, and we can take notes from, I think, something that everyone said in terms of these are holes. I wish we are missing that student voice in a way in the room tonight, but we've had parents, building level professionals, our district level professionals, and teachers and parents all speaking to these issues from their perspective. And I think when people look at this, they'll be able to say, wow, there are a lot of ways we need to come at this. And this is a bigger problem than maybe I anticipated. And that's what we want people to see. Is the scope of the problem, so that we can work on it together. So I'm hoping we're moving in that direction, and I'm hoping that people can be hopeful that we all know we have strong programming, but we can be better, and that we have to be able to say this is our problem, not their problem, you know, and that's why we're bringing this discussion out. So I thank you for helping to bring this discussion to the fore tonight. And to tease it out, because people will be looking at this and saying, why do I have to think about neurodivergent students, and why, you know, why are we talking about students with disabilities, you know? And when those issues come up, this is just the start scratching the surface of this conversation. But it lets us know that it's on our radar and that we have work to do in this area. Are there any other insights that people want to get on the record tonight, or concerns that we should be thinking about as we are addressing these issues, especially from a student perspective, of being aware of how students and parents are addressing these issues? We're going to be talking about from the instructional side next month, but some of the concerns that students or parents may have that we want to make sure that are on our radar. And when we're discussing goal setting, that we're aware that these are some of the holes or systemic issues that we need to be aware of. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for participating tonight. It was a pretty lively discussion, and we had some pretty good participation. At least these last 2 months have been some of the most participation we've had in a long time. And I'm hopeful that people will continue to share their perspectives and make sure that issues that are passionate and near and dear to our hearts are explored and discussed in a way that forces us to say, you know what, we need to keep this on our radar, make it a priority, and begin and address these things in our district. We're not shying away from these discussions, but we're having them, and then afterwards we're using that record to push us forward and to make us better. So I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and if I'm going to put it back in the hands of our student leader to close us out.
Thank you, Mr. Westbrook. If everyone has said what they want to say, can I have a motion to adjourn? Ms. Jaeger, and then second, Ms. Kaplan. Okay, I think we're good then. Good night, and thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
How do we turn off the recording? I don't know if I can.
Oh, I'm not sure. That's a good question, because I did not.
I don't think we can. I think when we both exit.
It'll be over and it'll stop on its own.
Okay.
All right. We'll connect.
Yes. Have a good night.
Take care.